Hello and a warm welcome back. It's Hans Peter here again. Today, we're going historical. Yes, because of my work in the posts over the past few months, there have been people saying, yeah, Hans Peter is really bringing down old, esoteric belief systems. Words like spiritual wrecking balls have been thrown around. What came to my mind? You have to take things with a sense of humor. It occurred to me recently, hey, in America you've got Elon Musk, Donald Trump, the Doge team, Department of Government Efficiency. They're really shaking things up. And then the word dose came to mind for me, Department of Spiritual Efficiency. Now it's really about questioning old spiritual or esoteric concepts. This is the time we need, the time to realign ourselves. Because, as I keep saying, spirituality, religion, esotericism, they've all been infiltrated and undermined, of course, over the last hundreds and thousands of years. And so today we're also dealing with a really fascinating topic, Christianity. The Bible title, Osiris and Isis Live On in Christianity. They have money. They've stolen and plagiarized endlessly, taking whatever they could from ancient Egyptian traditions and then selling it as Christianity. True Christianity, as I said, has existed since humanity has existed, the Christ Sophia, the Christ human, the Christ within us. These are ancient concepts that the Catholic Church does not have a monopoly on. In my book, I actually had to realize that we find the Christian Mother Mary, for example, as Isis. Wild, right? Let me give you an example. The Egyptians followed what was called a Sothic year. That is, a period of 365.2563, 636 days. The Egyptians divided the year into 12 months, just like we do, but then added 5 days to balance it out. And on these 5 days, which were in September, they were inserted, and that's when the 5 famous gods Osiris, Isis, Seth, Horus, and Hathor were born. The birthday of Isis was on the 8th of September. Okay, and now take a look. When does the church celebrate? The birth of Mother Mary? On the same day as that of Mother Isis with the child Horus. On the 8th of September, exactly. Wow, I thought to myself, that's quite something, isn't it? And so now I'm going to share many, many more of these facts and dates. It's about the ascension of Christ. It's about Christmas all these days. What do they really mean? Take a look at it. It's truly mind-expanding. It keeps our minds clear and pure. And yes, we continue on our journey. By doing this, we change the past, present, and future. Look, 40 days after the sowing, the Egyptians celebrated the Last Supper. And on this date, Sid is said to have invited Osiris to a supper, tricked him into lying in a coffin, then closed it, magically sealed it, and threw it into the Nile. The date for this, was revealed to us by Plutarch in his Moralia, edition 5, 3, 5, 6. Look here, I'm quoting. And those who were initiated ran to him and slammed the lid shut, which they nailed down from the outside. They also said that the day on which this act was committed, was the 17th day of Azar, when the sun was in Scorpio. Yeah, you have to understand what that means first. Of course, that means, converted, that means the 27th of November, according to our calendar. Just like at the Last Supper of Jesus Christ, there was a Father at the supper. So, let's move on, because 28 days after this event, after this day, the Egyptians celebrated the birth of the new king, the Horus child. And Osiris also stood for 28, the number for the lunar cycle. So, now let's count 28 days from the 27th of November. Oops, we end up at the 25th of December. 28 days is the cycle of the moon. And we still find these 28 days, for example, in the Christian Advent. 7, 14, 21, 28. It covers 4 Sundays, but the first Sunday, now it gets interesting. Plutarch said the 27th of November was this Last Supper, and Osiris was laid in the coffin. The first Sunday of Advent is always at the earliest the 27th of November. And this ongoing force, from the death of a king, a new one arises from him. Osiris, Horus. This is depicted very impressively, for example, in the Temple of Abydos, and that's also where the original saying comes from, the one we always hear in many movies, "The king is dead, long live the king." So, let's continue. Now it gets really exciting. Again, counting 40 days from this Last Supper and the betrayal by Set. In Egypt, the festival of Epiphany is still celebrated in honor of Osiris. And what do Christians celebrate on this day today? The Feast of the Three Wise Men. Isn't that fascinating? According to some traditions, the Christians actually had a problem when founding the church. They lacked archaeological and historical evidence for their accounts about Jesus. Or did they falsify them? Yes, that made sense, because everything was actually quite different. You already know that from my book, The Jesus, Thomas, and so on. The church fathers turned to the Egyptians, and there they got some dates from a list. Now it gets interesting, because everything can be traced. Clement of Alexandria, we even have the names, compiled them. Clement of Alexandria then first said Jesus' birth date is January 6th. January, Epiphany, the Feast of the Three Wise Men. And that was supposed to be the original birth date of Jesus? We can find evidence for that, even in history, in various churches around the Mediterranean. That is documented. The 25th. December was only introduced later. Namely, when the switch to the Julian calendar was made. That was the reason. And these 13 days of difference are also described in detail, for example, in the book Egyptian Mystics, Seekers of the Way by Mustafa Gadaya, written and explained. Exactly on this January 6th, on the Feast of Epiphany, people were baptized in ancient Egypt. Yes, baptized. It represented the symbolic power of death and rebirth. but not to free an alleged sinner from his sins, because we are born in sin. All of that is made up to control us and keep us small. The Egyptian festivals, my dears, were based on a multi-day cycle. For example, the renewal of the king always took place on the 1st. January, the Egyptian 22nd. Kihek. An image of Osiris then proceeded, followed by 34 messengers with 365 candles to represent the days of the year. Well, when Julius Caesar came to Egypt in 48 BC, he found it quite interesting. And then he commissioned his astronomer, named Sosigenes from Alexandria, to introduce this calendar to the Roman Empire. For him, it was a suitable and excellent calendar for a king who wanted to be celebrated. He thought it was really great, and that's where it comes from. According to ancient Egyptian tradition, the spirit of a deceased person also needed 40 days. In fact, the number 40 appears endlessly in the Bible to fully separate from the body and ascend to heaven. Yes, Christians celebrate Christ's ascension 40 days after his resurrection. Well, that's not really how it happened, my dears. It's all Egyptian mythology. Please. Yes, in my book about Jesus, I tell you, yes, the whole story of Jesus. Also in the book of Thomas. I've also made a few videos about it. I think I already have 10 parts in the Jesus series now. Check it out. There will be a lot more to come. Let's move on. Let's unravel this whole mystery. 50 days after Easter, what do Christians celebrate today? Pentecost. Okay. These 50 days represent the oppressed reign of Sid after the betrayal. Osiris there. Very simple. And after some battles between Zed and Horus, the Council of the Gods, the 12 Neteru, decided here in the story that Horus should rule again. And when did it happen? On the 50th. Go! I could really describe a lot more stories here in my videos and books. But I want to leave it at that for now, because that was already a lot of material just to be able to realize one thing together with you. Many people are still searching within the Christian Bible for salvation, for self-discovery, for the Christ within themselves, within us. Yes, the Bible does have some clues, no question about it. And they can also help us on our path, at least in part, if we understand them correctly, or many of them can. Because, basically, it is, let me put it cautiously, a respectable work, but it also leads us astray bit by bit, since it has been changed and adapted countless times so that we can't do it. Read the Bible, no problem, dear ones, go ahead and do it. But then please also read the other 23 or 27 as well. Altogether, the Apocryphal Gospels, and more about the Egyptian mysteries, because then you will get much closer to the heart of the matter. That's why I personally love the texts that the Bible is based on, because they contain far more wisdom and truth than its mere reflection, which is then full of omissions and insertions. What do you think about that? And that's exactly why, for me, it's also the foundation of this book, of my books in general, to present the ancient teachings as unaltered as possible, to understand the connections, to connect the dots, so that we can all create a better way to reconnect with them. That's what it's all about, to also understand the paths of Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Because it's a significant foundation that has been left dead to us. because they reveal to us the circumstances of our conditions, which the churches all deny and withhold from us. For example, the fundamental path is that of Isis. It's also called the path of Sophia, Mother Mary, or whatever name you prefer. That one is almost completely withheld from us. It was pushed off into the realm of myths, legends, and impossibilities. And around me, I observe that this knowledge is gradually awakening again, piece by piece. The earthly path to the divine, the path of Horus, also called the Christ path, wasn't destroyed, but it was heavily altered and distorted. The path of Isis, of Christ Sophia, of the feminine, was denied to us and taken away. But it is extremely important because we can only reach the kingdom of heaven with both Christ and Sophia, with masculinity and femininity united. That's why they took away the primal power of the feminine from us. Because what can the primal power of the feminine do? To look behind the veil, to have magical abilities, discernment, knowledge, and wisdom, and it would recognize everything. That's what it's all about. And because of that, we don't even have the chance to develop and reach our own higher selves. And this path of initiation, the path of Horus, cannot be walked without that of Isis, because it keeps us in the dark. Then we're just fishing in murky waters. And then we rely on the literature that's in the Bible or what the New Age movements provide us. But even those hide the essential things for the most part, and that's why we now need to understand again. To learn that we also have to call certain circumstances and conditions into our lives for ourselves in order to find the true path. Isn't it the case in the Soul Ends that the Horus path is initiated by Isis holding Horus in her hand, who can then lift himself up from her hand? It requires the power of Isis, the feminine intuition, knowledge, and wisdom. And I explain all of this in my seminar as well. The path of initiation, I believe that's on the 2nd or 3rd of August, when all of this will be fully revealed. But anyway, many people think or have learned from modern books and seminars that they just have to imagine something. They have to feel it, these manifestation books, in order to attract it into their lives. Yes, but then unfortunately they have to realize afterwards that it still doesn't really work. Why? They're told that all they have to do is believe in it and imagine it. You don't attract into your life what you believe, but what you are. And for many people, it still doesn't work. It's quite simple. People just don't know the prerequisites for it. Many would know the way if they knew about it. But others wouldn't want to take it because it's too exhausting for them. That's crucial. Namely, to actually fulfill these prerequisites that are required. Yes, I admit, it's not always easy, especially nowadays in everyday life, between work and family, to walk this path as well. We are distracted by the media every day, kept focused on the outside world. And many still trust what is prepackaged for us from the microwave, served up to us. Instead of preparing their own dish individually with the spices you like, that you need, because then you know what's in it, right? On the surface, of course, it's easier, more convenient. But it doesn't bring us to the goal of our entire incarnation here on earth. And it also doesn't lead our mind and soul to their own mastery. And that's why we should ask ourselves, each of us, am I getting out of this lethargy? To know, to want, to dare. Don't we all actually have the inner desire to simply break out of this pattern in order to fulfill your own soul's plan? I mean, honestly, Jesus wanted, Horus and all the other masters told us, just like everyone before and after him, to take responsibility for ourselves. He wanted not to be an idol, but just an ideal, not a messiah, but simply a messenger and role model. He wasn't someone who died on the cross for other people's sins. That's a huge lie. And besides, the historical Jesus didn't do that anyway. He didn't die on the cross, but that's another story. He also made it clear and explicit that we should follow his example and do even greater things and even greater things. Once again, the Christ is within us if we allow it. It's a clear call to each of you to take things into your own hands. That applies to me too. As I said, I'm not excluding myself here. It's a clear message that we carry all that is divine within us and are capable as well if we want to be. Or think about the words, not, I have healed you, but rather your faith in me. So, in the Christ, not in Jesus, but the Christ who works through him. He didn't save us from our wounds. He gave us help to help ourselves. That's crucial. Another clear message is that if we allow the Christ within us, we can set things right ourselves. Hidden away, we still find clues about his true effect and that of many others. But still, all church dogmatists believe in the Savior who will fix things for us. And the sheep follow. I think you can't get any further from the truth than that. And I'm saying this clearly and directly because I stand by it. This gives the impression that you can't take things into your own hands and that you don't even need to. It can never lead to true insight or initiation. It's an incredibly clever plan, but also devious, dark, and evil. Don't you think so too? If we start to understand, learn, and internalize the true mysteries again, reflect on them, and show real insight, instead of just repeating what we've been spoon-fed, like in school, cramming and regurgitating, I believe then we can all make it. Everyone. And that's exactly what we want to focus on right now, isn't it? That's what it's about. That's exactly what it's about, understanding these messages again. And in my book on initiation, I have, yes, described these three paths of Osiris, Isis, and Horus. You could call them father, mother, child, human, God, father God, mother God, human God. These are the teachings that Jesus Christ spread, and many others before him as well. What Todd wrote has been somewhat distorted in modern times, also by the New Age, or maybe it was simply misinterpreted. I don't want to accuse anyone of bad intentions. And I saw the mistakes too, and then I wrote it down again. These three paths of the Trinity actually bring us right back to where our natural connection lies. And I'm looking forward to what's coming. We are living in an incredibly insane time of revelations, like never before in the last thousands of years, and the last 12,000 years. It's gigantic what's happening right now if we allow ourselves to embrace it. And remember all those books about manifestation and such. You can only be a creator if you believe in the creator. Then you are a creator. You can only be a creator if you also accept the creator, let him flow through you, integrate him into yourself. And that's what they keep from us. And they also hide from us the power, the primal force of the feminine. Knowledge, wisdom, to look behind the veil of Isis so that we can be initiated again and develop magical abilities. Clairvoyance, clairsentience, sensing, to be able to fulfill our true intuition and purpose again. And all of this is now slowly being revealed, and I am really looking forward to what is yet to come. All the best from the heart. Be blessed and filled with light, and I look forward to the next contributions. Ciao.